Today, I want to talk about how focusing on what we have to lose versus what we have to gain can hold us back from pursuing our passion and living a fulfilling life. People who are successful are what I call educated risk takers, meaning they have spent time thinking about both the pros and the cons to taking certain risk, and ultimately they conclude that by not taking that risk, they have more to lose than they have to gain. So many of us allow the uncertainty and fear that comes with taking a leap of faith or pursuing our passion to stop us dead in our tracks. And then we look back and think, what if? Or say, I wish I would have, right? So today I want to share with you a few examples of how I let fear of the unknown and what I had to lose hold me back for many years from pursuing my passion and living a fulfilling life. And how I used emotional intelligence to help me move past that fear of what I had to lose and flip the focus to what I had to gain. Some people see taking risk as a gamble, like putting money in the stock market. Either we win or we lose. And we tend to see life the same way. Either we win or we lose. And we're afraid to try things because if we lose, then what if? What's going to happen? And much like the stock market, when we see others winning on something that we were too afraid to invest in ourselves, unpleasant emotions and feelings can arise, like envy, fury, depression, resentment, or despair. And we are left beating ourselves up, thinking, if only, right? Even when we're unhappy, longing for more out of life, and sometimes downright miserable, the thought of venturing out into the unknown can even be more discomforting than not changing a thing. Why? Because we are comfortable with the known. And as bizarre and nonsensical as that may seem, it makes total sense when we look at evolutionary psychology. Risk-taking in the wild doesn't often end well. Imagine tens of thousands of years ago if our ancestors decided that they were just gonna, let their guard down and go venturing off into the unknown. How long do you think they'd last? Our ancestors' trial and error didn't end well for many of them. And the ones who survived and witnessed this said, I think I will learn from their mistakes and not do that. To them, risk was bad, and risk often equated to death or pain. So while we may be uncomfortable with where we are, we know that at least we're alive in that moment, right? And that fear of risk has saved our species as much as it is hindering our species today in the modern world. The difference today is we know that taking certain risks in life are not going to kill us. Yet it doesn't stop our primitive brains from making us feel like it will. The two primary risks that I spent years unwilling to take was getting out of an unfulfilling relationship and following my heart and passion. I had a vision in my head from a very young age that I would find my one true love very young in life, and we'd spend the rest of our lives together. And I was bound and determined to make that a reality. So at 15, I started dating my first boyfriend, and I said, yep, that's the one. He's the one. I'm picking him. And so I stayed with him, and then at 19, we were engaged. By 21, we were married, and spoiler alert, by 23, we filed for divorce. And out of those 8 years together, probably only 1 or 2 of them were what I would call magical, air quotes for those who are listening. Really, it wasn't, I guess there was some love there, but primarily it was infatuation. And that infatuation, which I labeled as love, turned into control on my end. And when the pressure from that control started to affect our relationship, I failed to accept that our lives were going in 2 different directions, and this relationship was just not meant to be for a lifetime. So I had a choice to make. Stay and try desperately to make it work, or start over again. I wasn't happy, and I hadn't been truly happy in that relationship for many years, but I was comfortable enough that I accepted the way things were. We were more roommates than husband and wife, and we were just living our lives in parallel. I mean, his hobbies were ones that I actually despised. And while we could finish each other's sentences and we knew what the other was thinking, we had practically nothing in common. I loved to try new things. He was comfortable never doing anything or trying anything new. I enjoyed diverse foods. He didn't need anything that wasn't white, brown, or orange. I loved the idea of travel. He could care less. I enjoyed going out for a drink from time to time. He didn't drink at all. I was ambitious and driven with my career. He worked at a local car wash and often left early to fuel his video game addiction. We couldn't have been more different. But I would always say, well, it could always be worse, right? Like, some people's husbands beat them. That doesn't happen, so we've got it good. Now, him and I cared about each other. I don't want to make it sound like it was terrible, but that didn't mean that we were compatible. But isn't it crazy, the things that we'll tell ourselves? Like, it could always be worse. But do we ever think about how it could be better or how we deserve that? Rarely, right? And to be honest, I didn't take a risk getting out of this marriage. I was the one paying 80% of the bills, paying for vacations, paying for his loans. I was the one who bought the house. So financially, I would have been fine on my end. I wasn't taking that type of risk. But I did feel like I had a lot to lose when it came to the years of my life that I had invested in a relationship, because I had spent 8 years of my life with someone who I thought would be my forever partner. And I would lose the story of being able to tell our children that I met their dad at age 15 and we spent all these years together and he was my one and only true love. So that's what I was losing. I was losing my fantasy. And it took years to let that go and to shift my focus to what I had to gain from ending this relationship and starting over. I was 22 when I realized that if I stayed in this relationship, I would lose even more years being unhappy than if I took the chance on finding that happiness over the next 60 plus years of my life that I had left. Sure, it was scary. It was terrifying starting over. But I didn't want to come to the end of my life wondering what if, and not have taken that risk and bravely stepping out of that relationship. So I did. I left the marriage and started dating someone with a completely different background than I was used to. Someone from the city, someone who had a college education, someone that shared a lot of the interest that I had, that opened my eyes to a new world, that enjoyed going out and trying new things. Everything that I was kind of interested in and looking for. Although this new relationship ended 4 years later, it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that taking risk and focusing on what I had to gain ended up serving me better than playing it safe and allowing myself to be controlled by the fear of what I had to lose. I take risk every day as a business owner, not knowing the outcome or what the future holds. But I know that I'm following my heart and my passion, and regardless of the outcome, I will not look back and say, what if? Instead, I'll say, wow, what a life, what an adventure. So many lessons learned, but I will never have a regret about anything. Emotional intelligence doesn't make taking risk painless or stop us from feeling sick to our stomach when we think about taking chances. But what it does is it helps us to bring that awareness to why we're feeling those unpleasant emotions and feelings. And it helps us to be mindful and aware of both the pros and the cons of taking chances by objectively analyzing various possibilities. And when you have carefully laid out your options, your desires, and all the possible outcomes that you can think of, Emotional intelligence helps you to make a decision based on that information versus being tied to the fear of the unknown. So that is all for this week's Throwback Thursday. I hope you found it insightful. And if you find yourself relating to my story and feel that you're still being held back by the fear of the unknown, feel free to reach out to me. You can find my information to schedule a consultation in the show notes, and I would be happy to talk to you. Otherwise, thanks for listening or watching my Throwback Thursday for today. Until next time, live and lead with an open heart and open mind.